Hello, my dears, film spring openers. I heard that while I was away, Mayo is making an incredible career of the MC. I will not even try to be better than him because that would I would certainly not succeed. I wanted to present to you a beautiful woman and a beautiful artist in every artistic sense. Hanna Polak, who is here with us. How many times have you been here with us? Three, four, at least third time. Oscar-nominated director, scriptwriter. What else? I also wanted to say that when we're thinking that better times will come, this is the motto for our times. Let's hold up to that. Uh, she's leading the documentary group here, and she's always very popular. You can ask her all the questions, so use this time wisely. I pass the floor to you, Hania. Thank you. Thank you. I was thinking about today's formula because yesterday we had a presentation of my movie. So I was thinking, would you prefer me to tell about things related to production with the topic, or would you rather prefer to move some questions that you would have also technical questions, for example, related with the production of this movie? Which formula would you prefer to have it? Do you have questions? I don't know how you, but I would suggest that first you make some sort of a lecture because some additional questions might come to our minds, and then we would go to a Q&A session. So first, a few words about my project. So in 2016, in the second half of the year, I was addressed by a colleague of mine who had an idea, who encountered this topic of women who were accepted by Baden-Württemberg region in Germany in a sort of humanistic aid or psychological aid for the most damaged victims of this genocide. And within the frames of that, 1,100 women and children were brought to Germany. But that was more of a psychological work with them. However, the result was supposed to be that if they later uh, after receiving that aid, they would want to stay, they could still stay in Germany and settle there. Of course, that is some microscopic group in relation to all this community that was afflicted by this genocide. I was not in Germany at that time. I learned from Andrzej about this topic, but I sat down to work because he asked me to work with him on this so that I support him on this project. So I decided to sort of take care of the creative, artistic side of this, also with other people. Immediately, I had my editor, the Kobaskowski. He was working with us from day one, and my brother, who's a producer. So this is how it all started. And then we had this situation that the person who came to us with this idea, they could not, for some private reasons, perform this or move on with this project, and I was left with the topic, which I knew. I did some work related to that, but these were not my protagonists. I was not there, and I didn't know if I am able to continue that without this leading person. And I also had other obligations, so the situation was very difficult for me. Therefore, I decided in May 2017 to go to Germany. I went there with Gosia Szyłak for the first documentation work for several weeks, and when I met, well, I had this assumption from the very outset because I understood that this topic of women is explored by the media, the topic of rape, of sexual slavery. However, I was interested in this as genocide. I thought from the very outset that even if we only touch upon the topic of women, there are also men there who could not protect those women, their families of those people. So I knew that from the very outset I want to make a movie about genocide, not a film about one topic, but a comprehensive, all-encompassing problem a bigger story than just this one side of this. So that was the beginning. I went there to Germany. I really wanted to meet with men too, which opened the doors for me in Iraq, because I started to make this documentation for myself, and not with a camera. Not all those things were recorded. We recorded several morsels, several of the meetings, but it was not my intention to turn on the camera. I rather wanted to to establish the relation with this community, to have contact with the real people. I also saw girls who were so damaged, who were shaking when they saw me because they knew that there's a camera behind, that they will have to say something and they're not ready for this. And I knew that it won't work, that they don't need that. So I didn't even want to make such interviews with them. I wanted to give them some relaxation. We went to the park, we drank coffee together, we spent time in a nice way together. Later, I really wanted to meet the people who invited those women, or those women and children, to Germany, because I really wanted to hear their side of the story. I thought that if they were in Iraq, and I'm talking here about Michael Bloom, who was a representative of the German government in this project, and I went to meet him, not because I wanted to record something. I just wanted to talk to him. I just wanted to ask him the questions. What did he see? What touched him? What's important in all this story? His experience in general. I knew that he will be the person who was in Iraq, who took part in this tragic selection, because just imagine you have to select the most traumatized victims, and everybody is traumatized. But there is just a limited number of places, and that's it. And you have to do the selection. You have to choose, and that was the beginning. Then we were there only for a few days, and then I came back with a colleague with whom I worked on the previous movie. It was already July 2017, and I met with other people too. And every time I met those people, I felt that this movie is not here, that this movie is in Iraq. Why? Because those people were showing me pictures. It's just like here. People would come back from Ukraine, and they would show pictures to you, the pictures of people they left behind, the places that are still in Iraq, those people who live in some tents, in some squalid conditions in the camps. And I thought, it's not a movie that can be made here. I mean, it might be made here, but when we see the picture, then we have to be transferred to this camp and we meet those people. So I'm all thought that it's gonna look like this. And I did made this documentation. And in July, I decided to go to Kurdistan in Iraq. Kurdistan is accessible, it's relatively safe. So we went both to Kurdistan. And because I had this chance to meet with somebody in Germany, with somebody who gave me some strange phone number in which a fixer, because this person didn't even speak English apart from two words maybe. The fixer didn't even want to call her because she said she's not from that region and there's no chance to get in that area of Sinjar of Iraq. I decided to call, I asked them to call, and I saw his face changing, and and then he said, I don't know where you got that from, but it's really really high, and maybe you'll get there. We got the consent to go there. It was also a time when there are two ways going to Sinjar. There's a road through Baghdad, Mosul, Tel Afar, Sinjar, and there's another route from Kurdistan. The road from Kurdistan is shorter and safer in a way. However, that route was very blocked, and I once managed to get there, but when I entered Sinjar for the first time, that road from Baghdad, it was not accessible because Tel Afar was still under ISIS control, and it's about 50 kilometers from Sinjar, so it's really very close. So we were going along the front line. And even during this first trip, I managed to go through all the checkpoints, which is incredible because there are many different units which control that. And I had a lot of luck. I felt that it's something that if you, I was as if some the God's finger pushed me to make this project, that the door was opening before me and things were happening. The things were happening which should not take place. So this driver who was driving with me, he was praying to his, he was paying his imam to pray for him, and the door was opening, so to speak. But he also prayed in other situations, and the door didn't open. So I think here it was the destiny. No, it's like the doors didn't open for us, but here it opened for it didn't open for other people. It opened for us. They tried to do things for other people, and they didn't succeed, and they succeeded for me. Michael Bloom told me about Kocha. He told me about, it was a fantastic, very valuable source of information. It was also a great thing because when we met Michael Bloom for the first time in the very beginning, he asked me which media I represent. I said, none. I'm an independent filmmaker. I thought that he will get discouraged, but he smiled to it at me. And he said, "Okay, I took a camera with me, but I don't want to make an interview with you. I just want to talk to you." And he smiled again. And then we were sitting and talking for hours on end, and he told us a lot of things. And then he told me, I want you to appreciate. I want you to appreciate that I spent so much time with you because my wife is making a PhD. I had half an hour for you, and it's usually people ask me the same questions all over again. But because this was different, I gave you a lot of my time. And he was taking care of the 3 children they have because while his wife was making a PhD. That's why his time was very valuable. It's an incredible thing that he told me all those things because he pointed my attention. I wasn't there. I don't know the details of that story, and he was listening to stories of those women. He knew where they're from. He was the witness of the testimonies of those women. So for me, that was a very important thing, that this meeting, that I took part in this meeting. And it is so that I went to Iraq already thinking to document those places, and everybody told me it's inaccessible. Ziliad gave me like a letter, who was here yesterday, he gave me a letter of recommendation, and because he represents the government of Kurdistan, he represents some authority, but without that paper I would not be able to, even with the paper I would not be able to cross to access Sinjar, and without that telephone I was mentioning. So we entered the Dragon's Den. We passed some other checkpoints. I got consent to get to some other territory, and I managed to go through all those checkpoints, be in all those places, and I was the first person who came to Kocha after the liberation from ISIS. And I must tell you that liberation was in May 2017, and I went there. I went there in August 2017. So we're talking about, no, I went there in July. So we're talking about just over a month after the liberation, and they told me I'm the first person from the Western media who entered this place, and that was extremely important for me to document those places, because I knew that if this is genocide, then those places of massacres, with time, those traces will fade. The weather, time, some activities of disinterest, of people who are not really interested in documenting this, who were burning the remains or transferring the remains. Different things happened there. So this is a thing which was sort of according to the testimonies of the people. I can base myself on the testimonies of the people who told me that this Yazid community. So this is the background of me getting in there. And when I entered this place, I made connections with the other side, especially with the side of the Iraq government in Iraq, so the Baghdad government. because Kurdistan has its own independent region, and but on this, and they have their own government, and on this side there's a Baghdad government, and there was no possibility whatsoever. There were no embassies. Even if I tried to call them, I got no response, or somebody answered and never called back. So it was totally absurd. It was totally not possible to enter there. So the fact that I met the people there and they were able to get me an internal visa, they invited me, they made an internal visa for me and to establish all those contacts, very high when it comes to governmental relations. This is an incredible thing. And the next time I entered through Baghdad, Mosul was already liberated, but Dilafar fell on the 21st of August, I think, and in September, because the conflict started between Peshmergas, who are the Kurdistan, the army of Kurdistan, and the other side, the Iraq proper, or the Iraq and Sinjar army. So the army that was stationing in Sinjar, people died there. There was a conflict. They were pushed out of Sinjar. Checkpoints were closed and blocked for the next 8 months. No planes landed there. Though the situation was like this. So for me, Kurdistan got totally locked out. There was no possibility to enter Kurdistan, and I met Hanifa, the protagonist of our movie. It is also an incredible story because somebody brought me to her as one of the victims of the genocide. And while I was sitting there, she was really reluctant to speak because I came to her in the beginning of August. And she, in August, on the 3rd of August, it was a third anniversary of the genocide. Since 2014, there were like 3 years past. And a day before, she had a conference. When she was talking, when she was crying horribly, she managed to free 2 of her sisters in 2015, and these were 2 years during which she could not find a trace. And she was totally frustrated. She was totally broken down that she's not able to do anything. And she was listening to that story. She was, after that meeting, her head hurt. She was feeling horribly. She cried horribly, and it was very difficult for her. And so she was very reluctant to talk to me. She was sitting there, putting her head, a hand against her forehead. She didn't want to talk. And while I was talking to her, I said, "We've managed to. We had some filming in Germany with a few people." And I said, we've managed to get a visa for that person for the interpreter. And she jumped up on this mattress because that was her hope, that she really wanted to see her mother. She didn't see those sisters and the mother, and that was the moment when she caught it like a lifeline, like life-saving line, yeah. And she started to talk, she started to show pictures, and when she started to show pictures, I look at them, but this is Zina, this is Alia, I know them, I met them. And her mother, I met them in Germany, and I know their stories. And that was incredible. And then I already knew that Hanifa is exactly the person with whom I would want to continue working. And Hanifa, on the other hand, she got like a heartbeat, but she hates going to Sinjar. Right now she lives in Kurdistan. She hates coming to Sinjar because every place reminds her of what happened. This is a horrible trauma for her. So when I went later to Iraq, the checkpoints were blocked. Hanifa could somehow get through them, but she didn't want to do that. It was very difficult for her. This is how it all started. It also started to happen so that every time I came, some additional news emerged about the sisters, and I had the luck to be during deliberations, and the whole family was asking me to come, that something is happening again, something incredible was happening, that some of this finger of fate was in all of this. It was that kind of work. When I was in Sinjar and Hanifa didn't come, we were in touch. I knew also that there will be no movie because I have this visa. It was so precious. I have it only for a month, and it's so difficult to get it. Hanifa is not coming. Checkpoints are blocked, and then I met Said, and I decided to film him too. Said didn't want to tell his story at all. However, his commander, Hal Ali, a fabulous commander, he convinced him that it's very important for Yazid that this story is told. And even though Said's heart was broken when he was telling me this, he decided to cooperate with me. He started to show us his places, to allow him to allow us to film him, and that's how it happened. And we got very close with them. That is quite obvious that these people became very, very close to me. So this is the background of the story, and then it moved on, as you have seen in the movie. It was a very difficult production. In terms of production, it was a nightmare, because you know what the application process looks like, the documentation looks like. It was my own risk, my own money, and everything. In production wise, it was extremely difficult because it was very, very dangerous, and this risk, we can take this risk ourselves. However, you have a huge responsibility if we're doing that towards others. And with every trip, I mean, during the next trip, when we were coming to Baghdad, was this explosion in front of us. I could not film this because I was asked. I remember I was coming back with somebody. It was a private car, but that person was an army officer, and they asked me that we should not go out, no movement. We shouldn't take anything out because we're standing in a road and we're under fire, and they're not able to control what's happening if somebody's not sitting somewhere in the dark outside of the road. So we were stopped. One car before us was stopped, and later the army came. They secured the whole road. We waited there for hours before um, they removed the mines and checked and cleared the burning cars. And that was the whole situation. Then we went to Baghdad, and it was also a moment. There were also other things. There are a lot of inconvenience. You're in a destroyed region. There are no hotels. There's nothing. There's no electricity. There's maybe a small generator if you have it, and we'll buy some petrol and we can use the generator, and that's all. All that was very difficult from the point of view of living. Living in the rubble without water. Um, there's no water. There's no water system whatsoever. You can bring it with a truck. You can put it in a big tank, and then you have some of the water, which flows down. But it's very cold. It's very cold in general in there. Many hardships which are connected with the situation. Obviously that was very difficult. It was difficult in development and production. And then I was sitting there in unfinished buildings. I knew that there will be discussion. They want to give me. I mean, I was left alone when I came alone. But during the night, when you're in a dark building and there's nobody, just you, and I knew that this whole town is absolutely dark. People almost didn't come to Sinjar. It was just the beginning when they started to come back. So all this was sort of, I paid for this with a lot of hardship. We went, for example, to some location to the shooting. We were passing the checkpoint, and it was already the Muslim part. It was not Sinjar anymore. It was the part which is Sunni, where there was a lot of ISIS people. And on the next day and 2 days later, we learned that everybody was killed in this checkpoint, because 6 or 7 people were soldiers were killed because ISIS terrorists came and killed all of them. So we were passing this threat and this death. We were following each other, so to speak. I was never in the green zone. I never put on any press or signs, or I didn't have any sort of security guys with me, but or bodyguards. But it helped me. I was unnoticed, and people had trust to me. They would never say what they said if I came there with bodyguards, with Iraq soldiers, with Muslims who of whom they were very afraid in Sinjar at that point, because they became the victims of Muslim terrorists. So these are the decisions and choices you have to make. On the second time I came to Baghdad, it was during the elections, May 2017, and there was the election, and it was very rough. I mean, people were shooting on the streets, there were manifestations. Even recently, they had something like that, and we're sitting in a hotel. We could not leave that hotel because it was so dangerous on the streets that we had to wait. And you felt, I'm really sorry I didn't make pictures like that, because we were sitting in this hotel, and it was a bit like in the apocalypse now. You go crazy in the hotel sitting there alone, because outside of the window you can hear the gunshots, uh, and you feel strange in that situation. You can't leave. You're trapped in the hotel. You don't know what's happening. You don't know where you will leave. So all this was very, very weird. I then thought I will do that later, but if you don't do it at that moment, you will never make it later. You cannot remake this situation, retrieve the situation. And then, on the way back, I was brought to a different place. They asked me to make a documentary course for Iraqi citizens, for their journalists, war correspondents, because they were mostly war correspondents at that time, because it was freshly after the after that those wars. So I was teaching these guys, a huge room full of big guys, and it was very difficult because each one is at a different level. It's very difficult to find a common language. What can I tell them about financing or whatever? It's like absurd. So for them, synopsis scripts, that they wanted practical knowledge, and this is also very difficult during such a meeting to do it. So I must say, these were some weird experiences, but yes, unusual, very different, interesting. So that was the situation. And then, of course, working with the materials, that was a real nightmare. Even if I had an interpreter, I did not interpret on the spot. It wouldn't be like somebody would say and I would understand what they say. That would get in the way of the flow. And I also got used to certain work that I do understand the language, and I know it works better if there is a continuity, that somebody doesn't lose the train of thought. But I can't ask questions. I have to only react with my heart. If something is important, if the emotions are important, I will see how people react to things. Then later in the car, after such a meeting, I asked, "Can somebody brief me? Can you? Did he say this or that? What did he say in this place?" So these were the things that there was no translation on the set, and I was in Iraq for half a year. So we are talking about half a year of material, not every day, of course, not the whole day, but sometimes for the whole day. Sometimes this sound was being recorded, even though image was not being recorded. So it's gonna be most difficult part of this, the most difficult part of this work. So I got the interpreter, but then the borders were closed and the interpreter could not come, and another horror started, because it occurred that how do you do this? I mean, I didn't have an assistant who somebody prepared some files for me, but if you have 450 hours of material from such long trips, so many interviews, you have I really also wanted to get as much. On one hand, I had my protagonist, but on the other hand, I wanted to meet with those victims to record their testimonies of those women whom you've seen. One section with the women where you have those interviews. Then I had plenty of them, a lot more, some great material that I'm really sorry that they're not in the movie today, but it's always some sort of a decision. You have to be very assertive, and you have to ask yourself a question if it develops the story, the unity of place, because you have the unity of place, time, and action. In here, I had times which did not work well in some aspect. For example, I had some great interviews from Germany, but I couldn't use them because it was a totally different texture, totally different space. It was very difficult how to use that, how to creatively bind it all together. And that's a thing which we get because it was a generally very difficult process. I was sitting there trying to translate things myself. Um, um, in the United States, I mean, everybody was shouting, that's the last plane home, that last plane. I said, no, I'm not going anywhere. Whatever happens, I have work to do. I'm sitting here and I'm translating because there was a community of people, around 2,000 or so people, but it occurred that people are working there, like three full-time jobs, five full-time jobs, and nobody's coming. So it's pandemic. People are afraid to come. So never ever I did anything like that. That I would do translations on WhatsApp on my phone. Or that somebody would come for an hour and I recorded them for 1 hour and then I sat down and I was putting in things. I did subtitles by hand myself. This person translated, but you didn't know where the subtitle exactly is because the translator is listening, and even if he tries to do things simultaneously, it's not exactly the same, translated the same in the same way. So if you do not know the language and you do not have a translator who does it in-house sitting with you, it's horrible. I did it myself, so it's like a really incredible thing that we've managed to translate and edit that movie. And then we said we will never ever make such a project again because it's death wish, because it's something you cannot do. I couldn't get the files out of process the files out of Avid. Usually it takes one whole night. It lasts whole night because over 1 gigabyte. I can't shrink such files. In Sinjar, you do not have internet. So how to solve that? I mean, the fact that we've managed to translate it and process it and prepare it, that was a miracle. So, for example, we managed to get to get a scene edited, and then it occurred that that somebody didn't say it. What was there, and it was said by somebody else earlier, and we had to make the scene anew. Sometimes it happened that somebody would come, three interpreters would come, three translators would come, and I said, okay, we finished here. Let's start from this moment, and they with some buffer, yes, yeah, let's start with a small buffer. Let's start once again, and somebody translates for me something totally different. I said, blast! He's saying what's something totally different from what was there. So I realized that every translator gives me a different translation. Every time it's different. So it also. I had situations that if somebody is politically motivated, he will not translate it. He will not tell me. I had a translator like this for a week. He was good, but I felt that he said, "Oh, I can't understand what he's saying. He talks gibberish. I don't understand anything." And he didn't believe in certain things because he left before the genocide. But when he watched the material after a week, he decided that Said is right. And we were sitting at the table, and he said, I'm really sorry because I didn't translate that on purpose because I was not in agreement with that politically, but now I can say it was like that, so I'm sorry. I understood him, he talked with sense, but I didn't want to translate that on purpose. So as you can see, it required somebody from the region who would understand, who will not be hostile, who will not be against, who will not have his own political motivations. So these are the things that happened to me on the way, and then the editing started, the video editing started. Marcin Kopestkowski got this project. We've met with that's how I also met Sławek Idziak. That I was working on the Battle of Warsaw, and I made a documentary. This such a sort of a making of, but a very nice little document. And they made the main. They were making the main movie, and Jerzy Hoffman, the director, invited me to the editing room. I was sitting there, and I was sitting like that. Don't jump around, the scenes. But how can I mean, I had my ideas, but I kept my mouth shut. So I was sitting there with Kot and Mr. Jerzy, and then Kot required some time on his own, and then I didn't think about it that Kot will be my editor. Kot invited me to the meeting with editors, and I went there to see if something won't click, that there won't be some chemistry, that there is an editor for an earlier project. And this meeting ended, nothing clicked. Kot said, "Okay, I'm taking you for a coffee," and then it ended up so that we ended up in the editing room. Of course, I came to his editing room. No. Hello, I'm saying hello to Kasia, the wife of Kasia. Nothing happened between us. They have beautiful children. So how can you end up after a coffee with an editor? You end up in the editing room. And Kot watched that material, and I had a different editor in my previous movie, and he said, "Well, let's do it like this and that." And then I said, "No, I have a different editor. Will not do it," and things like that. Maybe I will do it, but not us. And then it occurred that he stayed in this project. He was the editor of my project, so it clicked. It also clicked with this project. That's why Kot was my editor from the first day of this project. When I was drawn into that movie. And of course, editing, as you know, you never know what the film is like. We have a lot of material, a lot of various material, a lot of motives, lots of stories. What we certainly knew with God is that we will be trying to build epic movies which are encapsulate a universe. That it's not just this motive. We always want to show that this is put in time, space, that these people have their culture, that there is something more. There's a certain universe that surrounds them. So for us, that was something very important. And one of our colleagues has this idea for a film about lace making, and it's a very like lace making. It's like you put one thread after another, you saw together those different shots, those different ideas. And Kot, because well, I'm an editor, Kot is an editor, but we have this beautiful connection, this incredible cooperation that I'm editing a certain proposal of a scene. Kot then processes it, changes it and polishes it, and then we switch places. I'm sitting next to him, and I said, I need to have this. I need to have this. And he makes a copy of a book of a scene. He makes sequences. I'm doing what I want to do, and he looks at what I do and says, "Okay, I understand you now." And then he follows this. So I have a very good communication. We're bouncing ideas between ourselves. And we're always thinking, we're always ruminating and thinking together. That's great. I really love working with him. He's a great professional in every aspect. And of course, on the producer's side, in 2018, we started to go around and to show this during pitchings. I was in Iraq because I met Simon Bauman and Saxonia Entertainment. I've known Simone since she was working for German TV broadcasters. She was preparing programs in Russia, and she would come to like a producer's company or producer's office. They had her office. She had her office there, and I did some minor works there. I was assistant DOP. I was learning at the DOP department. They took me to some project there, So I had contacts with this producer, and Simone also had her office there, and we met there. We liked each other a lot, and for many years we couldn't do anything together. And here we got this chance to do something together. And during that time when we were in Iraq in 2018, first Simone did a pitching in Czech Republic, and she won that pitching. So then we had a sort of a promise of a small grant from HBO and Czech TV, with a promise of that potentially the Czech TV will be a co-producer of the movie. That's not big money, but everything is important to every penny counts. However, when I was there in May, a bit later, in Iraq, the Russian crew was killed in Africa. The crew with whom Simone produced, so she was in a very bad mental shape, and she was very nervous that I would not get hurt here. I was in Iraq. Those people were in Africa, and they made a movie about the Wagner's group, and they were murdered. So such situations happened. And producer wise, we started to make pitchings, and we were both were we were both in hot dogs. We presented the project there, but we did not get to the main pitching, so he had individual meetings, and we had such a possibility. And then there again we got some more movements. Arte entered the project, and we had HBO. So it is so that maybe it was not a production with the previous production. I had a lot of different TV broadcasters. Here there were less of them, but they were big and important, and I'm very happy with that, because that gives you a possibility for the whole Europe to see that movie, because HBO has uh, and we had the Arte, so this German French side. Almost the whole Europe is covered by these broadcasters. The territory which has the chance to see that movie. When it comes to festivals, things are difficult, because we got at the worst times. We stumbled upon the worst times because we applied for Berlinale, but the film was not complete yet. You know how it's sometimes like that. You apply before you finish the film, and then it occurs that you cannot apply for the second time. And then they cut away. They had very few movies, and due to all those limitations, they had to remove or reject half of the films they accepted. So we got on to a very difficult time. People were sitting in pandemics, they were making movies, and there was a movie before us on the same topic, which for some reasons was scandalous, because many things happened when it comes to consents of the protagonists, etc. So that was another pebble on this mountain, and that's how it looked like. I don't know what to say more. Of course, editing, working with the protagonists, how to shape it, how to work it out, that's another story. I always approach it as if we had a box of puzzles, and now how you put it together. You do not have any image to refer to, so I'm writing scripts, I'm thinking, we put it, we sort of put it into pieces on the whiteboard. I use memos, like sticky notes. I had them with me. Well, Avid allows us to work separately because of those limitations in flying, in transport. So we were working in two different places, but Avid allows for it. And because me and Kot, we already made one project, we're sending the bin to one another, and we immediately know what he's doing, and he knows what I'm doing. He immediately knew what I was thinking, and that's how this cooperation works, and it's really good. I know the person, and on the other hand, I do not need to be with him in the same room. Of course, it would be the optimal situation, but we have the conditions that there are, And so this fantastic software, Avid, allows to send those bins and be um, up to speed at a flick of at a bat of an eyelid, and you have access to all this information. That's fantastic. So we've been working like this, and I came back only for sound processing. That was horrible. People were nervous. We were not always. I was not always able to articulate what we need. It was very difficult for me to choose music. I knew that I have something at the tip of my tongue, but I didn't know how to express it. These were some very difficult stuff, and it's always like this that you have people who support you. That is always very good, because sometimes can, for example, put things into words, something that you really want to say but you don't know how. This is not easy. This is like a very specific language which you have to communicate with the composer. So there are always like changes. For example, the music is too high, or it's too instrumental, or you want to hide it somewhere, or it's a wrong piece. It's beautiful, but when you hear it for the third time, you feel like, no, this is not the right one. So this is the difficult part, and the composer needs that briefing. And Kot made this fantastic job with sitting with the with colorist in the editing room. So he actually did my job. He was sitting in color correction because I was not in Poland at that time, but I knew that Przemek Niedźwiecki, a great colorist, is there, and I knew I can trust him. I knew that there is Scott, who has really good taste, and he made many movies, and I knew that I can trust him. And when they sent it to me, uh, I saw that it was okay, but I didn't have a reference mentor, so I couldn't say 100%. But I saw that it's done well. So these are the things where you can trust your crew, with whom you already have made several projects. And there are those difficult moments where there was a lot of misunderstandings, very difficult situations, because it's different when you're sitting and somebody feels you, and it's different when you have to give a precise instruction and you still do not know. You have to search, you have to look for it, you have to take take something off, you have to put something on. But this final effect is as it is, as you have seen yesterday. So, can you do it better? Yes, you can always do it better, but it's always the question of the time of your crew, the energy of your crew, what is your schedule, what is your energy level, where are you able to add those few additional percents? Would it be the same? So these are the things which are decisions which are very difficult. It's it's teamwork, and I felt that later I want to open this film again, and I opened it after we applied the sound. Kot was sick at that time, and he couldn't participate. I opened that film and I started to tinker with it. Kot got angry at me again because that he couldn't. No, sorry, he got nervous that he cannot participate in that. But then we sat together and we could finish it together. I made those changes because I felt that there's something wrong, and then HBO came back to me. It was the same weekend almost that I sat down and made those changes, and they called me there and said, "Listen, they have to be changes." And I said, "Well, I just made those changes." And then we sat down and we finished that movie. We moved the scenes to the front. We changed the sequence in a bit. I recorded the off. It's very difficult for me. It's the film producer, and he has something to say. The question is, did they're the producers of the movie. I don't know. I don't have a problem with that. I do not have the deal with those people. It never worked like this, that somebody would require from me to make the change. That would be bad for the film, but which would at the same time be one-to-one, because that this is what they requested. When I say okay, this doesn't work. If this remark is good, I accept it. If it's not good, or if I'm not convinced, then I'm bouncing against it and I'm looking for a new idea. I'll give you an example from the children of the Leningradsky station. I was working with HBO on this project too. For the first, I worked with the American HBO, all then with HBO Europe, and with children of the Leningradsky station. First, we watched this with Eva Różewicz in Poland on the screen, and HBO watched that in their screen at the same time. And we were on the phone and we were watching it simultaneously. We had a supervising editor, Jeff Bartz, and when they wanted to make a remark, they stopped and say, "It doesn't work here." And there was a scene we edited a scene with Eva where the lift goes up and it stops on the top floor, and then you have shots of children sleeping in the attics, and it was like a false promise because this lift went nowhere. It is like you felt disappointed. You build certain tension, and there's no end of that scene. And they said, it's a really good shot, but you have to delete that scene. I said, no, we have to work on it. I have to sit on it. And I was thinking. I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I was thinking again. I couldn't sleep. I woke up and said, Eureka, I have it. I've got it. And I got the materials where this boy is talking about the pedophilia, that whenever you come, that's fear. When you come, those people who exploit you, that's a fear, because you don't know if you will go out of there alive. This boy, I wanted him to stay anonymous because it's a very difficult interview. I've lighted him that he's only a shape on the black shape on the dark background. You can see his face, and that of course builds tension. And when I showed it to the producers, they said, "Well, they loved it," and they said it's absolutely okay, and the scene stayed in the movie. So for me, the remarks of other producers, they are like a guidance. Sometimes they have a great idea and you realize it, and sometimes it's just something to bounce against. Even when I'm talking to you, I'm trying to give you creative ideas. I suggest things to you. When you're sitting with the editor, you supplement each other. It's from one idea to another. You bounce from one idea to another, and that's why I need such partners in my work. Sometimes I need to talk about it. Sometimes I need to bounce against somebody's creativity, and that's how I treat those meetings. And because those people, thankfully, especially I'm talking here about my cooperation with HBO, they do understand and feel. Their comments are very professional and very important, and so I do not have that problem. But obviously the final decision belongs to the director, but they have the right to voice their opinions, and I'm very open to these opinions, and I really like it. They're all like old timers, a very well weathered specialists, and they're further away from the material, and it is very difficult when we're so close to our material. And with every such project, you learn a lot. It's a structure, because the story is the most important thing. This film was made with Panasonic GH5. I don't know what you think as professionals here, but I think that the camera really carried the movie for the big screen. It was small, so it allowed me to be small and to be alone. I put up two cameras. One camera was on a tripod. It's on, and then it was on all the time. I was just going there if the batteries there, if the cards didn't end, and then I got the other one for the editing. So I put, and then people did not notice even I could not be there. Oh. There was this moment where the girls went to the group. I didn't even call them there. I didn't tell them to come. They had like this small jubilation, which didn't have a real meaning here. But they would come in and go out and come over and go out and go away. First, some women came with them and they were crying, but I wanted them to be alone. And because I left this camera, this actually happened, and I joined them and I made my own shots, my own pictures. So you have to be creative how to do this. Sometimes I had 3 cameras. I had two cameras here and the third one held handheld, or I'm working with zoom, or I'm on a very close. I'm on a close-up, controlling the sharpness. So in the conditions that you're in, uh, if you this is how sort of how you have to think about this movie. It's great for me that those cameras are small, because if I'm going alone, my basic luggage is weighs even less than my iron-filled backpack and my bag. So you have to sort of smuggle things through the airports, etc. It's more and more difficult. You have a lot of quarrels, a lot of arguments with people. So how much of that you can carry? I was working with people who's traveling with 1 ton of equipment, and that was a nightmare. She makes great pictures. That she has dollies, tracks, etc. Everything is in bags, blah blah blah. Like she has cranes with her, but it's all fantastic. But then you have to set up. You have like nice shots because you're getting out of maybe you're running around the roof with something interesting. It's all fine, but if you're alone, that's an absurd to make such pictures. Yes, we twice. I had a Ukrainian DOP. He who took a drone once. The second time our drone was arrested, so we didn't have it. But there was a no-fly zone, so it's forbidden to fly. It's not that it's forbidden to fly. It is. The thing is the drone doesn't work. You have a blockade, and you will not be able to start it. So we contacted specialists in a certain country, and we got what we needed for the drone to fly. And the drone flew, but these were just few days, and then our drone was arrested, and we never got it back. So it stayed until this very day in Iraq. I think it is already was passed in somebody else's hands. So that was the situation. Misha was flying this drone several times. It's a pity that it wasn't. He didn't do many of the shots, because you won't go there because everything is mined. The other thing is filled with mine, and that's you can't go there. We would also got the perspectives of those beautiful mountains. We had many other ideas, but that was sufficient for us. I got also drones from my colleague from Iraq, who was in the army, and immediately after the liberation of Kochan, he flew over the burnt land um, with his drone. I have the whole archive, the military, like warlike archive, because I got uh, a lot of material from Mosul, from Delafar, from war operations in Sinjar, even. And I was thinking, should I use that? And we also had the archive of what ISIS did. People collected that and they were sending it, but then me and Kot, we decided we don't want to give voice to the perpetrators, to those who harmed and damaged our protagonists. Apart from the points where it was absolutely necessary, where this boys coming back from the ISIS prison, or slavery, or the story about those two boys, which has shaken me so much that I was not able to speak. I was silent. It was so that we heard the stories for the first time when we were there with Gosia, and we're coming back in stunned in silence. We were totally broken down. And then you go on the website and you read people writing, good for them, but and you know that there's such a tragedy, that these boys are brainwashed, that they are not ISIS, they are Yazid children who are used in this situation. So that is horrible. I got a microphone. I wanted to ask you two questions concerning the drone shots. And when your equipment was arrested, didn't you fear that your materials would be also arrested or taken away from you, or some local or international law would prevent you from using that material? You know what? It was so that when I entered and they saw the cameras, they asked me, "Is this a camera or is it a photo camera or is it a movie camera?" No, it's a photo camera. It's not a movie camera. It's a photo camera. They said, "Okay, a movie camera would be a film camera would be a problem, but a photo camera is not a problem." But then they confiscated that, but then they told us that we can retrieve that, but we never managed to get it back. Somebody tried to get it back, we didn't manage to do that, and we finally left this place. And we had this promise that we'll get it, but we've never managed to do it. But of course, the threat is always there. I was in a situation when they told me to delete everything, but I had experience from my previous jobs. But this is also a topic of what we do of our classes here. That filming in such hostile environment, I just replaced the cards very quickly because I had that experience earlier. You know, filming in a dump in. I was in Afghanistan too, so because I had this experience, I immediately replaced the cards, unnoticed by those people. I turned back. I quickly hide them. I'm ready for this situation. That materials have to be protected. That in a while somebody can tell me delete that, and they want to see if they are deleted. So we were in a situation in Iraq, in that situation in Iraq too. Finally, we didn't have to leave. I made I made hell there, and I raised hell, and they resigned. But they did demand that we were to delete the materials in a situation where we filmed. Also, when we changed places, when we moved in certain places, and the military was there, and if there was we were to fly a drone, we were contacted the army for them not to shoot at the drone, because these are also the drones for surveillance and throwing bombs, so people are afraid, and also that could have been shot down simply. So we contacted the military, and somebody on walkie-talkie informed that right now in this territory there will be a drone, because in this very place, any like licenses or without consent, you will do nothing. I was sitting at once at home for a month. I had a visa, but I could enter, but I didn't get the approval to move on. So I had to sit at home because the general who was issuing the approvals, he left, and the other general did not want to talk to me at all. And I was waiting for the first general, um, who, who was coming back from abroad. But I was also lucky that these are situations when you're sitting next to one of the very important generals, and I say to the other person who was sitting with me, let's take pictures with him. Let's have pictures with him. And in checkpoints, whenever we enter, they say, okay, you can't come to Sinjar. And I take out the picture. They say, okay, sorry, move on, because I'm with a very important person. One is in checkpoint, they didn't want to let me through, and I could, and the general did not respond my phone. And I said, I cannot call him. And they said, you don't have his mobile phone number, they say. And I said, I showed him, and I said, okay, I do, and I showed it to them. And he said, he compared it with his phone. Okay, you have his mobile phone number, and you really try to call them. So knowing the right people is extremely important. When you get those consents, those approvals, then you have for certain units. If one unit is not listed, that unit will not let you through. So by accident he did not put in one unit, and I had whole problems all the time with that military unit to enter. They were checking me for ages, for hours. They called, etc. When Wotha was liberated, I didn't have the approval to enter Sinjar, and I was waiting for hours to enter Sinjar, and they didn't want to give me the approval. And finally, I said, "Okay, let's go." PKK, the Kurdish Labour Party, gave me the consent, but the other one didn't give me, and I said, "Okay, let's go through the mountains." And we got through the mountains, and we managed to come. If I went from the other side, I would not be able to come, so I was late in a way to the shooting. You have to fight until the end. So how many people did you have there? What was your crew? Because you said that you had more DOPs, they were giving up. No, well, I had two DOPs. One was two cinematographers. One was in the first trip. During the second one, he had to resign because his wife was pregnant. This is a huge risk, you know. So you have to understand him. During the second one, then the same person was to join the second tribe. If they gave us the visas immediately, we would all enter there. But because it was closer to the birth of his child, and the DOP really, the wife really needed that DOP because she was in a very advanced pregnancy. She didn't need that nerves. You know, it's like tormenting a pregnant woman. So he decided for his relation, for the life with whom he lives, and this is his life. He decided to stay in Poland. Especially that was, you know, that was this very first pregnancy, a difficult one. So he decided to stay. And there was this boy from Ukraine who was supposed to come there as a sound engineer, and he got a sound engineer's visa. And because the other one resigned, he also wanted to resign. And then I was supposed to stay on my own, and I said, I have no idea how I would go there, how I would do that. That this is beyond my ability with the equipment and everything. But he went there, and he went there for 2 rounds, but he resigned after the second round. And from that moment, I entered Iraq totally alone. So every time I went there by myself. One of those trips was such that somebody came from the government. He moved me to Sinjar through all those checkpoints, through Mosul, etc. And I had an argument with him. He said, quickly. I said, no, I just came here. I have to do it. I need more time. And one word led to another, and he kicked me out of the car in the middle of that town. He said, bye, and he's gone. I say, wow, now I have a problem. I have no approval. I will not cross any fucking checkpoint. How will I come back? It worked like this, that I got for 1 day, 1.5 a day, and I only made the pictures that I should do. Because of all this commotion, it was all late. But I did I shot what I wanted to shoot, and I think he got softer, and he called the guy who agreed to take me out for the money, but he was not with any government car. I didn't have any approvals. At every checkpoint, you have to open the windows and show your approvals. So I was sleeping on every checkpoint. I was. They could see a bit of a scarf, some hand, just to see it's a woman, but everything was covered. If they told me to raise, I would be done for. And only the last checkpoint had a problem, and then it occurred that when they really started to pick at us and ask us, this guy took out his own document that he's in this military, he's very, very high. But for any other army, he would be a civilian, and he would not pass with me, and he would have been in lots of trouble. So I must tell you that nobody did it like that, because nobody took such risk, and I'm really grateful to COD, because when Wotha was liberated, I had the Iraqi visa. I couldn't go to Kurdistan, and I know that if I I pass those checkpoints, then I have to fly from Baghdad. That I will not I might not enter, and that was a huge risk. It was the first time because I didn't have the Kurdish visa. I I have the Baghdad visa. They're in conflict, and I thought what to do. And I called Kot and said, Hanifa wants to go with Wodha to Kurdistan, and I have this visa, and it's a huge risk. And Kot said, I would follow the protagonist. And I said, okay, that's clear. I entered the car. Uh, I went there. We're standing on the checkpoint. I already see that things are going down the road the wrong way, and I'm telling to the driver, okay, let's go to the other. Turn back now before they come up to us. I can already see that there's a big blockade. That there's a lot of the army, etc. I said, we will be sent somewhere to the HQ in Erbil. We will have a huge problem. There will be some investigation, what's happening and why. I try to be a very raw profile. So I said, turn back. And we went to the next checkpoint. They didn't let us through. Okay, let's go to the next checkpoint. But they didn't do any problems. They just said they will not let us through. Okay, we went to the next checkpoint and we passed on the next checkpoint. So here you have the paper from Ziad. Please help this and this lady. And I'm saying this because nobody did that. No, people knew that it's impossible to pass, so nobody even tried, nobody even risked. And I took that risk once, and then I risked repeatedly. I passed all the checkpoints because I really wanted to do something. I passed those checkpoints, I did something, whatever I wanted, and then I came back. We did horrible things there. I guess goosebumps when I think about it now. Waiting in Mosul for the general in a bar, me, a lone woman, until 10 p.m. Something which is totally unthinkable. 2 days later, the building of the restaurant exploded. So these are the risks that we had to take. Difficult stuff. A lot of luck too. The risk is there. You try your best, and we at least succeeded in this way. Do you have any more questions? What do you want me to say? There's one question there. As the final card says, when you finish the movie, the last sister was already found. Did anything happen with the last sister? Not so far. I mean, there are some traces that somebody said that theoretically saw her, but when I recently spoke with Hanifa, she said she doesn't believe it. She heard so many times that somebody died, that somebody is alive, that somebody is here or there, because they said first that she's in one country, then in another country. It's impossible to get there. She has no contacts, so we do not know really. We still do. There's still no information, and Hanifa is a bit broken down and a bit frustrated because this hope appears somewhere and then disappears. She says that even if it happened, so that if she knew that she has a family there, that okay, she selected that life, but she's alive, and she was found. But right now she's in a total state of lack of knowledge and ignorance, and everybody's looking for the close people. And Hanifa is a representative. I'm trying to tell the story through community about an individual, and through an individual about the community. Wodha returns, and everybody have the same questions that Hanifa has. Hanifa is calling, even if she has the possibility to talk to her mother for the first time. She's on the phone. Wodha, especially, she was in a horrible emotional state. We were sleeping with Hanifa and we were taking turns at the door so that she does not escape, because she was running away. Really, she was psychologically totally broken down. I I have a very deep relation with Wodha. We like each other very much. We love each other very much. She's a great girl. She really won me over on the day or when she returned, because when I was going there, I was still turned back. I was filming, sitting on the front. This was a day where I had horrible migraine. I didn't eat anything. I took two painkillers. My stomach was in the revolution. You know, I couldn't even get additional pills because I was sick both from the pills and from the migraine. And I was turned back and I felt sick in the car. I jumped out and they were standing next to the car and talking. Whoever sat in that car, Sofia, a distant cousin of Hanifa, somebody else, and Hanifa and water took water and she brought to me and she was sitting next to me crouching looking if I'm okay, and I'm saying that's impossible. This girl is coming back from slavery, and instead of being concentrated on herself, she sees me, sees I'm sick, and she comes over to help me. She has such human traits that's incredible. Somebody who for so many years has been in such a bad like that. I mean, she really won me over. So I'm really happy. The mother of Hanifa loves me too, and I have a lot of blessing from her, a lot of prayer from her. So fakirs are praying for me, and that's why I'm okay. And vice versa. They are great people. It's also an incredible part of this. I will tell you about one more thing, which is very important for me. The sort of core, the gist for me is discussion is something which really it's getting on my nerves, that Hanifa alone is looking for her sisters, that it's 8 years have passed from that genocide, and there was no soldier or mercenary who would be supported from our taxes, but she's always looking for those people. She gets them out of slavery, and then I have huge problem. I do not understand that. How can we live in such a situation? The wars are being produced everywhere in the world, and I mean, if we were another oil field or another magazine of weapons, those women will be found immediately. This is this is the problem I have, is that propaganda is for us and the money is for them, and I'm really fed up. I think that today we are not protesting in any way against the fact that somebody's pushing us towards nuclear war, towards genocide of the total humanity. So governments are buying the antidotes to radiation, and there's no will to sit down on the table and talk. I do not understand this on any side of the barricade, especially from after what I saw in Middle East. I have no doubts that it's all about oil fields, about another business, because who gets that money? Who come from all those countries? They go into military complexes. This money goes to military complexes, and this is something, these people have no value as a living humans, and it's always the same story. Somebody's making a business on that. Anyway, any more questions? I have two questions. The first is a technical question, because I didn't know you're an educated as a DOP, and that helped a lot. And now a concrete question: how, percentage-wise, if you can calculate that, what was which shots were yours? Because it's very valuable that you're a DOP. Because those situations where Saeed is driving, you film him, and there was supposed to be you would need a DOP. That wouldn't work. No, there were two cameras there. That's why we have those two cuts. Side. I was sitting here, and Said was there. And of course, there were also shots where I was alone with Said. my two DOP colleagues helped me there. But of course, all those pictures when I'm with Hanifa, for example, when Wotha was being freed, I was I was alone. Only I got the consent. I got the approval, even though I had a second DOP. But they said only one person will enter. So that was a moment I was thinking about the optics, and I said, no, I'm taking just the manual lens and my favorite lens, and I said I will make it in absolutely manual way, handheld. And that's the moment when you see she starts to run, and I still do not understand. I didn't understand that the car has started, and I can see her jumping up, and they told me I was forbidden to enter to start the camera, so you're losing time. So I had to, when I can see somebody running, I turn on everything. I run after her. I'm trying to be cautious, and I push people away. There's a moment of blur. There's a moment where I try to get everything in sharpness again. And there's this fear: will I have this shot? Because it's a unique situation. I do not have another cinematographer. I don't want to be too intrusive too. I love this manual optics. Quite often it doesn't work well because you have to react immediately, and sometimes it is so that unnecessarily I do not have depth of field, because you need a better depth of field. But I like these optics, and it's risk. It's a risk, of course. That you might have it or you might not have it. So the fact that you are a DOP really helped you with that film. I mean, I really encourage you to, because if you're not a DOP, please take this camera. Yeah, the contemporary technology helps and is more forgiving in terms of certain lacks of skill. My second question, totally different, concerning the budget. What was the budget, if it's not a secret? And the second, very shortly, what was the path of getting the money? Because there were several co-producers, and was it so that you went somewhere? Oh, I do not remember what was the budget really. Not because I don't want to say, it's because I was not sitting with those budgets. But we had the financing from PIS. We had the money from HBO. We had a German co-producer, so there's Saxony, and they had a contract with CDF Arte. We also applied to Creative Europe Media for production. That it's below 60,000, so I'm talking about the method. Let's say the first money is from PISF. Let's say it's 50,000, and we take that to HBO. No, it's the other way around. PISF is always the last one. I don't know how it works now, but PISF was always at the end. You had to have everything closed, approved with other producers, and then you cannot change that budget anymore. So the point of the pouch is important. The point of the pouch, and then you go for, I get 100,000 from here, give me 50, I have 150, then I go to the other ones, etc., etc., and then you have the piss. Yes, because but when I made my previous project, every time I first make the film and I put all the money that I managed to collect in that film as my own, and this is my own risk. Listen, this is a very expensive project. Apart from flight tickets, you have the equipment. There's another thing. The second side of all this. There, in place, I had to have a car, and a good car, a car which is able to drive around all those uneven roads in the mountains where you can't generally get with any. You have to have like a four-wheel drive. So I had a car, which cost me 100,000. Sorry, 100 euro, 130 euro a day. So we're talking about a lot of money, and you have to come with this. You have to come there with this cash, and you have a lot of your own input, and it's a professional risk you undertake because you love what you like. With the last uh, with the last movie, I made a promotion for Oscar, and I did it for my own money. Unfortunately, I got an agency, and I had to pay it with my own money. People think that it's so easy, but I have nothing. I bought some cheap camera and I live in some room which is 12 square meters, which is not mine. I live on very low means. But this is my nature. I do most of things for free. I want to serve people. This is my life, to do something for others. But of course, you need money to live and to do things. But such projects are expensive. And you apply and you wait for this money for years and years, and then you have to settle all this, and you have to settle the accounts, the budget. And it's also horrible. Our project was also quite expensive because other people's are professionals. We have the composer. I'm saying you have to change this and that. But I say, okay, but pay for this. Then you have the editor. You have to open the project again, etc. And you pay for all this. It's not that. It's fight until the end to do it as well as possible, because the budget is already overboard, and but you still have to do it. And if you're in outdoor and you have to end, how much time do we have? We're done. We have no time. Okay, listen. If you want to talk to me, of course, I'm at your service. I'm at your disposal. Several people wanted to meet me. I have also other topics to which I would like to talk to you about, because I think that today journalism about what's happening, and that we do not have any press, that these are the peddlers of certain companies, because these companies control the media, and that we do not have a real journalist today. I think that this responsibility is on us. And I think it's a different topic. I didn't want to talk about it here because it's not the topic of our today's lecture, but I will be glad to meet you to talk about a topic which this movie relates to, because I think it's war what we're dealing with. It's a third world war. Let's not have any illusions about that. Our responsibility is huge, and in the situation that we face, and I think we have to talk, we have to communicate, we have to do certain things together and share information, brief one another, because everybody has a limited time, but everyone can work in his domain or her domain. So if you would like to meet, I don't know how it's gonna organize but I will be glad to do such a meeting. I would many people ask me about that. I would make a separate meeting with you somewhere. Thank you very much. I would like to thank Film Spring Open, Sławomir Idziak, and you all that you are here, the whole crew, that I could show the movie. It's a fantastic event, and I hope it's not the last one. Thank you. I just have an announcement. The lunch starts at 1:30 today. Please stay in this room because we will start in a while the next very interesting lecture. Kuba Ben is here with us. Revolution of the AI revolution in creative industries. What was supposed to take place at 10, we moved that to 1 p.m. I think it's a very interesting topic, and I encourage you to stay with us. Short break.